It's amazing. It's wonderful. Okay, so here we go, devotees. Srila Prabhupada-lilamrita. Nama Om Vishnupada Krishna Presta Bhutale Shamati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadeshatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Pramanityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchkalpatarubhyascha Kripas Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, let's just see. So we are at Tittenhurst, at John Lennon's place, and different things are happening. So, let us catch up with Srila Prabhupada. Sure. There's all so much here from London. It's amazing. Okay, here we are. Dawn arrived and time for Prabhupada's morning walk. The cold September night shrouded the morning in heavy fog. Some of the low-lying grounds were waterlogged this time of year, and even in the higher plots, the long grass would remain wet until mid-morning. This climate, Prabhupada admitted, is not at all suitable for me. But having heard of the beauty of the grounds, he insisted on taking his usual morning walk. Tittenhurst dated back to the 1770s, when the estate had been renowned for its many varieties of trees and shrubs, one of the most unusual collections in England. Even now, cypresses, weeping beech, Austin poplars, royal palms, redwoods, varieties of pines, monkey puzzle trees. Wow. And orchards of cherry and apple graced the stately grounds. One cypress stood more than 125 feet tall, and the redwoods grew even taller. Bushes and vines grew in dense thickets. Close by the main house were hundreds of rhododendrons. Wow, hundreds. That's a lot. A formal rose garden and several fountains. The estate had its own lake, stocked with goldfish and perch. And at the far end of the property stood a row of greenhouses for grapes and peaches, designed so as to be abloom in every season. The grounds had been carefully kept for generations, a recent owner having employed more than 20 gardeners. John, however, was deliberately allowing the grass to go uncut. Okay. In Russia, it's quite common. The parks in the cities, long grass. Yeah, it's very, very common. Prabhupada walked out into the morning mist, onto the long, wet grass, dressed almost entirely in black. He wore a Russian hat with earmuffs. I've got one of them. I've got two of them. You pull it down, tie it, and you just, it's too warm. Right. Earmuffs and black rubber Wellington boots. A black full-length overcoat given him by the devotees in Germany covered his robes and sweater, leaving only glimpses of saffron cloth. As Prabhupada walked, accompanied by several of his disciples, he passed a fountain near the main house and entered a grove. The path narrowed, with vines and bushes close in, and led them into an open meadow, once a well-tended lawn, but now a field of high grass. Bulldozers had excavated an area which, according to rumor, would soon be a helicopter landing field. At the bottom of the sloping meadow, Prabhupada entered an orchard. Many leaves had fallen from the trees, and the sun's first rays now revealed shavings of autumn gold at Prabhupada's feet. He stood under one of the trees, and the diffused sunlight made the sky beyond the branches glow golden. In my childhood, he said, there were so many names given to me. My maternal uncle called me Nandu because I appeared the day after Krishna appeared, and there was a great celebration on that day. I was called Nandu because I was born the day after Krishna, and I was also called Govardhan. One of my sisters used to call me Kacha. That's a bit unusual. I've been called so many names. As children, we were all very beautiful. There are always so many names given to them. But all these names, they're all dead and gone. He turned and began to walk again, saying nothing more on the subject. Prabhupada mentioned the British economy, which he said was sinking into the sea because of the pound's devaluation. So many British lords had gained their wealth by exploiting other nations. Now, having exhausted their good karma, they were suffering the results of their sins. They were too poor to maintain their great estates. They used to have 17 men working full-time just on the garden, Prabhupada exclaimed. And now they cannot even pay the taxes. So they have to give the whole thing up. And it is falling into the hands of the Sudras. Ishan asked Prabhupada, how is it that a person like me from such a degraded background can come to Krishna consciousness? Now that's a good question. Prabhupada replied, because you are intelligent. I tell you something, I was not intelligent. I don't understand, Ishan said. Because you're intelligent, Prabhupada repeated. Ishan's wife, Vibhavati, asked, what is the meaning of spiritual master? Actually, I am not your spiritual master, Prabhupada replied. That title is simply a formality. You should think of me as your spiritual father, your eternal father. As they walked past a tractor, Kulashekar remarked, "The tractor is a very wonderful invention, isn't it?" Prabhupada turned to Kulashekar. "This tractor is the downfall of the Indian village system." Krishna. Why is that? It does the work of 10 men. Yes, Prabhupada said, previously the young men of the village would be engaged in plowing the field. Then this tractor came along and did the work of all those young men, and they had nothing to do. So they went to the cities to try to find work, and they fell into illusion. Stopping beside a clump of yellowed grass, Prabhupada asked, "Why is this yellow grass different?" No one answered. "The other grass is green," he said, "but this is yellow. What is the reason?" Still no one answered. "This yellow grass is drying up," Prabhupada explained, "because the roots are not attached. Therefore it is yellow. Similarly, when we detach ourselves from Krishna, then we will dry up." They walked to a spot where the grass grew almost 6 feet high. Stopping at a path the tractor had cut, Prabhupada smiled. "Oh, we can go through there?" And he strode ahead with his cane into the head-high jungle of grass and weeds. He walked until he came to a low hill that had been cleared, and he stopped. As he stood there surrounded by the sea of grass and a few disciples, Kulashekar asked about the song Prabhupada had been singing earlier that morning. The song, Prabhupada said, is about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He would rise and he would go out at this time of morning when the sun was risen but is not yet in the sky. That's Udila, Aruna. As Prabhupada spoke, the mist was already dissipating and the golden glow in the sky had moved higher above the horizon. Prabhupada raised his hands and swayed from side to side. In this way, he said, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would dance in the morning. As they returned by the main house, John Lennon stood gazing out through the glass doors, watching. Prabhupada, walking with a cane, dressed in his black coat and his Wellingtons, looked like the gentleman of the estate out for his morning walk. Stopping now and then, he would look at certain trees, touching their bark, rubbing their leaves, inspecting them closely. At the beginning of the walk, a devotee had picked a rose and handed it to him, and he still held it in his hand with care. He had walked for an hour. Everywhere the scenery had been beautiful, and everywhere he had instructed his followers in Krishna consciousness. As Prabhupada approached the building where he lived, he met little Saraswati. Taking her hand, he walked along with her to the foot of the stairs where they stopped. Prabhupada was halfway up the stairs when he turned and saw Saraswati standing in the doorway watching. He beckoned and called to her, "Come on," and she crawled up the stairs after him. When Saraswati came into Prabhupada's room, he asked her, "So, are you old enough to go to the Gurukul?" "No," she said, shaking her head. Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, "Come here. I'm going to put a stamp on your forehead, and then we're going to put you in a red mailbox and send you to Gurukul." Saraswati began to cry. "Malati, Malati, I don't want to go," and ran and hid behind her mother. "Come on, Saraswati," Prabhupada coaxed. "Come sit on my lap and I'll give you some prasadam." She came and sat on Prabhupada's knee. "Now get me the stamps, Purushottam," he teased. "We're going to send her to Gurukul." Saraswati shrieked and ran to Malati. To Srila Prabhupada, Saraswati was a pure spirit soul, but because she was in a small child's body, he didn't teach her philosophy. He teased her, gave her prasadam, and treated her with the affection of a grandfather. But through her attachment to him, she would become attached to Krishna. After breakfast, when the sun had warmed the air, Prabhupada opened his windows, sat down at his harmonium, and sang bhajans. As he sang with closed eyes, his head shaking, he played the harmonium, and Yamuna sat at the bottom of the stairs, crying tears of appreciation. Prabhupada had been singing for a while when he stopped and called for Yamuna. "Do you enjoy my kirtan?" he asked. "Yes," she nodded, "very much." "The prayers of Narottam Das Thakur," he said. "This sound is above the material platform. It is directly from the spiritual platform. And there is no need of understanding the language. It is just like a thunderburst. Everyone can hear the sound of thunder. There's no misunderstanding. Similarly, these songs are above the material platform, and they crack like thunder within your heart. Why don't you come here every day during my chanting?" "That would be wonderful," she said. "Yes," said Prabhupada, "from now on we will record." And every morning after that, Prabhupada sang, and Purushottam and Yamuna would come to his room and record. "What is your favorite bhajan?" Yamuna asked. "What's yours?" Prabhupada returned. "Lord Chaitanya's Shikshastaka prayers." "My favorite," said Prabhupada, "is Hari Hari Vipale." He recited the gist of the prayer in English. Maybe we'll sing it next time, whenever that is. Whenever that is. We've got that. It's such a nice song, amazing song. So he recited the gist of the prayer in English. "O Lord Hari, I've spent my life uselessly. Although I've taken this rare human birth, I have not worshipped Radha and Krishna, so I've knowingly drunk poison." He said, there's so much depth of meaning in Narottam Das Thakur's prayers. Purushottam, once Prabhupada was sitting alone in his room. I walked by and I heard him singing a prayer I'd never heard before, and I went in. Of course, everyone knows he sings. He can sing very beautifully, very greatly inspired, but I'd never heard him sing as beautifully as he did that one time. I'd heard him sing many, many times in many temples, but I'd never heard him sing as beautifully as this. I felt very honored to hear it, very privileged. It was beautiful. When he was done, he just got up and said, "Let's go now." Prabhupada also chanted one chapter of Bhagavad Gita daily for 18 days. Anywhere Bhagavad Gita is chanted, he said, that place becomes a tirtha, a holy place. Purushottam reported to the devotees in the United States these activities of Srila Prabhupada. Quote, he is singing prayers a lot, and much of it is being recorded. I must admit that the tapes of songs and prayers he is making now are the best ones I've ever heard. Wait until you hear them when we get back. As the Bhagavatam says, drink deep this nectar, O man of piety, and you shall be taken from this mortal frame. The women cooking for Prabhupada were serving him American desserts, apple pie, donuts, glazed cookies. Prabhupada would smile, but he would only nibble at his dessert. One afternoon he said, these sweets are very nice, but no one has made me sandesh. None of the devotees knew how to make Bengali sweets. So Prabhupada took them into the kitchen and taught them how to make sandesh. Although they had watched carefully, their first attempts produced sandesh that was dry and grainy. But Prabhupada accepted it, preferring the sandesh which Krishna himself used to eat, to the Western confections. For the devotees at Tittenhurst, to have Prabhupada living among them was again to witness Krishna's pure devotee as he engaged constantly in ecstatic devotional service with his body, mind, and words. They could see how Prabhupada was speaking and acting in Krishna consciousness at every moment, and his presence confirmed that the most exalted platform of pure devotional service was a reality. His disciples felt bliss and renewed determination just being with him. Prabhupada's hosts, John and Yoko, also had the valuable opportunity to be near Prabhupada, although they chose to keep apart. Remaining together in their own world, they mingled, but rarely with the devotees. Prabhupada's men continued to work under John's managers, and John was content to let the Swami and his entourage stay. When the gardener asked John how to treat the devotees, he said, let them please themselves. On hearing of certain activities in the main house, Prabhupada commented about, fasten your seatbelts. Fasten them. What now? Where are we? Yes. On hearing of certain activities in the main house, Prabhupada commented about the bad influence women sometimes have on men. But he kept out of John and Yoko's affairs. He had his own affairs in Krishna consciousness. Because John Lennon, it was denied by some people, but the general understanding amongst many people who knew them very well was that she really polluted him badly. Oh, yeah. She turned him into a drug addict. And, oh, yeah. She became really envious of Prabhupada. Having been whisked from the airport to Tittenhurst, Prabhupada had seen little of London, and one day he asked Shamsunda to take him on a tour of the city. Prabhupada had grown up in British Calcutta, hearing London praised as the seat of Britain's world empire. So when he saw how small many of London's historic landmarks were, he was particularly surprised. Actually, even when he saw Buckingham, oh, okay, he's going to say it, right? At Buckingham Palace, he remarked, "We have many houses in Calcutta bigger than this." I mean, Buckingham Palace is pretty big, actually. But some of the palaces, I don't know if you've seen some of the palaces in India. My Lord. The palace, yeah, in Udaipur, pretty big. Okay, the Thames, celebrated in the writings of British authors he'd studied in college, was a disappointment also. It's a canal, he said. It's only a canal. In my mind, I thought it was bigger than the Ganges. Krishna. But the most interesting sight was the building at 7 Berry Place. City officials had recently granted the devotees permission to occupy the temple. That part of the battle was won. Hari Bol. Now Shamsunda and his few helpers had to finish the remodeling. On seeing the temple's location near the British Museum and Madame Tussauds Wax Museum, Srila Prabhupada became even more anxious that Shamsunda fix an opening date as soon as possible. In September, Srila Prabhupada wrote to Satsvarup about his stay at Tittenhurst Park. He said, "Here there's a nice big hall, exactly suitable for a temple. I've begun to give lectures here on specific days, but there are no outsiders coming." Prabhupada wanted to preach to the outsiders, and if they wouldn't come to him, he would go to them. His first outside meeting, arranged by the devotees, was at Camden Town Hall, in the heart of London. Not exactly, but anyway, yeah. And was well attended both by Britishers and by Indians. After Prabhupada's brief lecture, only about 15 minutes, a lively question and answer session began. Woman, would you say Krishna is God or Krishna is love? Prabhupada, without love, how can Krishna be God? Woman, I asked you. Yes, that is the real process. Krishna means all attractive. Anything which is all attractive you generally love. Man, then the particle of the Supreme Being, man, is also all love. Prabhupada, yes, you are part and parcel of Krishna. You want to love somebody, and Krishna wants to love you. This is loving exchange. But instead of loving Krishna, you're trying to love something else. That is your trouble. The love is there in you and Krishna. And when the love will be exchanged between you and Krishna, that will be your perfection of life. Man, thank you. Indian woman, would it matter if I worshipped any other? Would it matter whether I worship Krishna or Shiva or Christ or Buddha? Would it matter? Prabhupada, if you worship Shiva, you'll get Shiva. If you worship Krishna, you'll get Krishna. Why do you expect Krishna by worshipping Shiva? What is your idea? Indian woman, my idea is, would it matter? Prabhupada, don't you suppose if you purchase a ticket for India, you'll go to India? How can you go to America? Indian woman, this is not the point. Prabhupada, this is the point. That is explained in Bhagavad Gita. Yanti deva vrata devan, pitrin yanti patri vrata. Indian woman. But my point is, Prabhupada, your point you understand. Why don't you understand the description of Bhagavad Gita? If you worship demigods like Shiva and others, you'll go there. If you worship Krishna, you'll go to Krishna. What is the difficulty to understand? Indian woman, do you think that Shiva is a demigod? Prabhupada, yes, why not? But Krishna, Indian woman, but Krishna says that it doesn't matter the way you worship. All means have the same goal and you'll reach the same goal. You can take the different paths, but you'll come to me eventually. Prabhupada, try to understand. Suppose you have to go to the 42nd floor of a building and you're going up one after another. So the goal is the 42nd story. But you cannot claim that after a few steps I've come to the goal, the 42nd story. The path is one, that's all right. But you have to reach the ultimate goal. You do not know what is the ultimate goal. You simply say all paths reach to this goal, but you do not know what is the ultimate goal. Oh my gosh. Listen to this. A young hippie stood up and shouted, "Hey, Swamiji." People in the audience turned around and looked. You said if we're not careful, in the next life we'll become a dog. But I want to tell you that I don't mind if I become a dog in my next life. You have my blessings, said Prabhupada. And the young man sat down. Hare Krishna. Okay. We'll continue, tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Or any comment or question or anything? Oh, yes. Well, just one moment, please. Because the world wants to hear what you're going to say. Hundreds, thousands of people out there.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I once heard someone say that Prabhupada predicted John Lennon's death, a violent death. Is that true, or any information on that?
I have not heard that. But John Lennon, just like we are reading about Daksha in the Bhagavatam in the mornings, and I think we all know that Daksha was offensive to Lord Shiva, who's great devotee. So John Lennon became offensive to Prabhupada. Yeah. And I'm not aware of Prabhupada saying anything, but of course there are many things that Prabhupada said which I'm not aware of. But that if you're offensive to particularly to a great devotee, you're going to end up in trouble, really in trouble. And that's what happened to John Lennon. It was mentioned here that, what did they say? On hearing of certain activities in the main house, Prabhupada commented about the bad influence women sometimes have on men. Prabhupada was just so totally super sharp about people. And I'm sure he could just immediately see that Yoko Ono was a bad influence on John Lennon. Yeah. And the certain activities was that the two of them were regularly every day injecting themselves with particularly heroin, and they would leave the syringes, they used like when you got vaccinated recently, they just leave the syringes lying around the house. And I was told, maybe it's going to come up, but I was told just not long ago, like last year sometime, that when Prabhupada saw these things and he understood what was going on, and Prabhupada said he wanted to get out as quickly as possible. Yeah. So, yeah. John Lennon, poor fellow. But he did some service. So, what can you say? Is that okay? Oh, yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I was wondering what happened to Seven Berry Place, whether it was sold or...
Seven Berry Place. We stayed there until I think it was 78, or it could have been 77, but I think it was 78. We moved to Soho Street. Have you been to London? Yeah, so we bought Soho Street. I think in 77 it was bought, and then they fixed it up and then moved in, I think 78. I mean, we were using Soho Street while I was still there, and I left London in January 1980. So when they got Soho Street, because they were just we bought Soho Street. We were renting Seven Berry Place. We were just renting it. And we didn't need it, really. So they just gave it up. And it's still there. I mean, the building is still there. And, when there's special, like, anniversary festivals, I remember, what was it, 1995, I think, something like that. It was one of the anniversaries of one of the deity installations, and loads of devotees came, and I went also. And we all, this whole group of like couple of hundred devotees, went on Harinam. And we went to Seven Berry Place and offered obeisances just outside on the street. It was, it was a block, it was a little office block. That's what it was. But they converted it to sort of living. At least they converted the main room on the ground floor into the temple room. Yeah. So it's there. It's from, Soho Street, temple. Soho Street itself runs off Oxford Street, which is the main street of London. And, it's sort of one of the main streets in the world. And it runs directly off. And we are about maybe like 25 30 meters down from Oxford Street, from the main street. So it's a pretty incredible location. Yeah. And from there, and Soho Street off Oxford Street is the first street down Oxford Street off Oxford Street. It begins at Tottenham Court Road, which crosses it. And then after Tottenham Court Road is what's called New Oxford Street, which is, it's just a quiet, it's not busy at all. Oxford Street's just so busy. And if you go straight down New Oxford Street, less than one round, at least the way I chant. It's like a 5-minute walk to Berry Place. Straight down New Oxford Street. And Berry Place is to the left, and ours, there's a pub on the corner, and 7 was the first building after the pub. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So you were mentioning about this young girl, Sarasvati. Do you know anything about her after Prabhupada left and so on?
Well, there was an interview of her. This is 1968. And she was, I don't know, 3 or 4 or something, I'm not sure, in 68. So that means that now she is more than 50 years old. Yeah. There was an interview of her. I don't know if it was in Back to Godhead or where it was, but I read it a couple of years, maybe just before the COVID time. It was something like that. And she's not a practicing devotee, but she's still, her and her mother, they have a very close relationship. And she's sort of a friend of Krishna, that sort of person. Yeah. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.